The topic tonight is God versus science. Some in academia today claim that science has killed God. They don't mean this in a literal sense, but what they hope to communicate is that science has removed the need for God, or stronger, that science has demonstrated the non-existence of God. Statements like these lead many to think that these two concepts, God and science, are mutually exclusive. Tonight, I address the question, can God and science both be true? Well, before answering this question, clarification is needed. Specifically defining both science and God is required. Now, science is commonly understood to be the study of nature. It follows then that a scientist is one who studies nature. This means scientists have a specific expertise in understanding nature based on observable and empirical data via the scientific method. This is the field of a scientist. This is what a scientist does. A chemist, for example, like Frank. A chemist can share insights about chemistry, but they begin departing their field when they make statements about other areas of science, such as biology or physics. A scientist is completely out of their field of expertise when they comment on other things, such as literary criticism, art appreciation, politics, or anything other than nature. Now, God, if he exists, is the creator of all nature. It logically follows then that God would be something other than nature, unless one wants to affirm incoherent statements like, nature existed before nature existed. Thus, one who studies nature, a scientist, is simply in the wrong field if they claim their credentials give them any special authority to speak about the existence or non-existence of anything other than nature. You might as well ask a plumber what they think. Nothing against plumbers. But you see, a plumber and a scientist don't have any special authority or expertise when it comes to things other than nature. Be that as it may, there are many logic-based arguments demonstrating God's existence. Over the course of this next year, here at Reasonable Faith, we are going to examine many of these arguments. One of my favorites is called the Kalam cosmological argument. Now, the Kalam is based on the laws of logic. But the laws of logic, you see, are presupposed by science. A scientist can't even begin conducting or engaging in the scientific method without first presupposing that the laws of logic and the rules of reason are true. So the Kalam is based on the laws of logic, but moreover, it's also supported by scientific data, leading to the conclusion that at least one thing exists that is other than nature. That is to say, there is at least one thing which is supernatural, namely, in this case, God. We will discuss this argument later. Moreover, my master's thesis, the argument known as the free-thinking argument against naturalism, which was the focus of my master's thesis, logically proves that other supernatural things exist. These immaterial things, or supernatural things, things other than nature exist. In this case, it's the human soul that I deductively argue for. So these are two great reasons to conclude that the philosophy of naturalism is false. By the way, naturalism is nothing but a philosophy, and a bad one at that. I want to discuss the faith of a naturalist. Many have a faith, a blind faith, in naturalism, starting with the presupposition that all that exists is nature. One who affirms naturalism affirms that all that exists is nature and nothing else. Only things which can be scientifically tested or discoverable, It is only these things that exist, if you're a naturalist. If this assumption happens to be correct, then that only nature exists, then it would follow that only things that can be scientifically tested and empirically verified, only those types of things exist, nothing else. So right off the bat, it's vital to recognize that this philosophy of naturalism is only a question-begging assumption that can never be proven. So, why think it's any good? Why think it's a good assumption, let alone correct? Why think it's true? This belief that nature is all that exists is simply a belief held via faith alone, a blind faith at that. There are many reasons to think this philosophy of naturalism is incorrect. The assumption that all that exists is nature leads to the notion that the study of nature, what we call science, would be the only way of knowing reality. This view is referred to as scientism, right? Scientism. This view of scientism can also be called empiricism or verificationism. These terms are often used interchangeably. Basically, one who affirms scientism holds that science alone is the source of all knowledge and truth. In fact, a scientist once told me that science is the only way of knowing. Well, this raises the question, how does he know that? Did a scientific experiment or an empirical observation provide this supposed knowledge? Of course not. The view of scientism is self-referentially defeating. The empiricist claims to possess knowledge, that science is the only way to gain knowledge. However, this knowledge claim itself is itself something that cannot be gained via the scientific method. It's important to think logically. If one believes that only the things which can be scientifically verified provide truth, and they believe that's true, then they have a big problem. Why? Because the statement itself cannot be scientifically validated. Think about it. The statement, only scientific discoveries are true, is not a statement that is scientifically testable or discoverable. It's not discovered in a lab. This is known as a self-defeating statement. It's a logical fallacy. I always like to say, any argument based on a logical fallacy is no argument at all. To clarify, this is similar to the following statement. There are no sentences that contain more than 3 words. How many words is that? It's not a trick question. It's 10. There are no sentences that contain more than 3 words. Should we believe that sentence? Should we believe that proposition? Of course not. The sentence is comprised of 10 words. Therefore, that statement is false. Self-defeating statements cannot be true and ought not be believed, at least by individuals who consider themselves to be empowered by reason. It's vital to realize that empiricism is nothing but a philosophy of epistemology. Big, scary word. This second here. The philosophy of epistemology. Big, scary word. Now, the philosophy of epistemology, I'm going to explain this here, but this view of empiricism is not based on the laws of logic, but only on question-begging assumptions, which is another logical fallacy. Typically, if one holds to the assumption of scientism, it's because this assumption is based upon another assumption, that of naturalism. Now, let's talk about naturalism again. Naturalism is a view based on the assumption, blind faith assumption. Okay? This is a blind faith. The naturalist, I hope you see here, holds to a blind faith. Naturalism is a view based on the assumption, the blind faith assumption, that nature is all that exists. Now, I should make it clear that naturalism can also mean different things to different people. Most who affirm naturalism will contend that only nature exists. That's their faith. Only nature exists. This is specifically defined, here's another big scary word, as metaphysical naturalism. Others might be open to the supernatural, but claim that no one could ever know if things other than nature exist or not. Those in this camp are called epistemological naturalists. Now, here's the difference between epistemology and metaphysics. Epistemology just means how we come to know things. It's the study of knowledge and how we possess knowledge. That's all epistemology means. Metaphysics is the study of ultimate reality, or ontology. So a lot of times we'll have to distinguish between ontology and epistemology. Okay? So again, epistemology is just a study of how we know, and metaphysics or ontology is the study of ultimate reality. Two different things.